I'm Bill Potter. I have the privilege of directing the Center for Nonproliferation Studies. On behalf of the Center and on behalf of the Graduate Institute in Russian Studies, the co-hosts of this event, I'm delighted to welcome you to what I think will be a very unusual and interesting seminar. Although the room in which we are meeting hardly has any visible distinguishing characteristics, in some respects it may be thought of as our local Ruski dom, or our kind of Russian home, as it's been the site of a steady stream of Russian speakers, including generals, ambassadors, parliamentarians, famous television personalities, also chief U.S. arms control negotiators and ambassadors to Russia and the Soviet Union. Indeed, next to our kitchen at home, it probably has witnessed more debates about U.S.-Russian relations than any room in California. And I say that quite seriously. Am I correct on it? And yet, while we've been privileged to host several past and present deputy foreign ministers, this is a very, very special occasion. And in my prepared remarks, I was then going to transition to the fact that this was the first time that we've ever had two simultaneously serving Russian ambassadors to the United States and the United Nations with us at the same time. But as it turns out, we only have half of that grouping. I should add, off the record, the most important half, Anatoly Antonov, who is both a former deputy foreign minister and also the current Russian ambassador to the United States. Why, you may ask, are we so honored by his presence? Our academic vice president, Dayton Johnson, who is with us today, may guess that it's because CNS is a hot spot inciting all kinds of problems and in need of troubleshooters and peacemakers who've honed their skills at the UN, at the NPT review conference, or in U.S.-Russian arms control negotiations. Others might surmise that they are here because we have more Russian speakers per capita in Monterey, I believe, than any other place in the United States. Thanks in part to our graduate initiative in Russian Studies, our Ms. Mikimo dual degree in Nonproliferation Studies, and our unique Russian T&I program. Perhaps our guests are just curious about what's going on here and want to see what these Russian-speaking students are up to. I should mention that we're especially proud that one of our students here today just returned from India, where he served as the principal interpreter for Prime Minister Modi at the summit with President Putin. Deepan, I want to recognize you. So if you have any questions in Hindi, in Russian, in English, Deepan is the person to turn to. But more than anything, I'd like to think that our guests today are here because in a world increasingly in disarray, and where one is hard-pressed to find opportunities for constructive U.S.-Russian dialogue, Monterey is seen as a rare venue where such discourse is both normal and routine. It's been my pleasure and privilege to have engaged in this kind of a dialogue with our guest, Ambassador Anatoly Antonov, for over 2 decades. Indeed, the ambassador knows me so well that when I don't ask a question, he often still answers it for me, particularly if it deals with non-strategic nuclear weapons. And we may turn to that issue later. As always, it's a pleasure to welcome him back. As I mentioned in my introduction almost a year ago, when Ambassador Antonov first visited Monterey, I've had the pleasure to know him during his days as a leading Russian government expert on export controls, as director of the Department of Security and Disarmament at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as head of the Russian delegation to the 2010 NPT review conference, as Deputy Minister of Defense, as Chief Russian Negotiator of the New START Treaty, as a newly minted Doctor of Political Science, and as Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and now as Russian Ambassador to the United States. In each of those incarnations, I can say with confidence that Ambassador Antonov was a very gifted interlocutor, tough but always professional, and someone who represented his country always with great dedication and determination. Needless to say, today we find ourselves in a very difficult and dangerous international situation, which regrettably also applies to the state of U.S.-Russian relations, which continues to erode almost on a daily basis. As many of you are aware, historically, one issue on which the Soviet Union and the United States was able to cooperate closely, even at the very difficult moments in their Cold War relationship, that was the issue of nuclear non-proliferation. It remains to be seen if that cooperation can endure the current deterioration in our overall relationship. I can think of literally no one more qualified to speak about that issue, nuclear arms control and non-proliferation, than our seminar speaker today, His Excellency Ambassador Anatoly Antonov. Please, Anatoly.
Bill, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this excellent introduction. I'm just looking at my colleagues from my embassy because they don't know who I am. They have to understand how it is important, what kind of privilege they have in our embassy. So I'm kidding, of course, and thank you very much for this opportunity to meet to you. I like this town. I like this institution. I like my friend Anna, Bill. So that thank you very much for inviting me for this opportunity. And frankly, I didn't hesitate to come to you because I know that there is a lot of young folks who are very much interested in non-proliferation, disarmament, arms control. I know that you have your personal views on various issues. I'm sure that you will not agree with me on all issues. I like it. I like it because it is a possibility for us to discuss it in open-ended atmosphere, in a candid atmosphere, and to at least what I want from our meeting. I would like you to think about my questions, about my logic, about my argument. And maybe after challenging me with your own thoughts, you will try to find some books, some publications about non-proliferation, disarmament, and arms control. And I would like you to devote the whole life, your whole life to these brilliant issues that they are very much interested in, regardless what kind of relations United States and Russia have now, regardless what kind of shape of non-proliferation regime we have today. And if you permit me, I will make a few remarks, general remarks, but I consider that they are very much important for understanding where we are, and then I will be ready to try to answer to some of your questions, because if I say that I'm ready to answer to all of your questions, please don't trust me. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's just only a magician who can answer to all the questions. So I will begin from very simple issues. Russia and the United States are the biggest nuclear powers and permanent members of the UN Security Council. That's why we bear a special responsibility for maintaining global peace and security. There is an axiom. Current relations between Russia and the United States struggle through their worst times. Historians, politicians, political scientists cannot recall any other time when our relations were in such miserable state. Other countries, international peace and security suffer because of this. The worse the Russia-United States relations get, the worse becomes the situation with security
with reduction and limitation of nuclear arsenal in the world. I would like to remind you that the positive outcome of Soviet and Russian United States negotiations always had a positive impact on disarmament in other areas. We are focused on bolstering and implementing the NPT, which the cornerstone agreement of non-proliferation and disarmament. And by the way, it's not a slogan. It's not a slogan. I just would like to confirm that it's my general understanding what is going around and on which base we can create something special for strategic stability. The treaty's significant role was stressed in the recent joint statement by the foreign ministers of the depository government for the NPT, Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom in support of the treaty. The statement was adopted in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the opening of the NPT for signature. And again, I would like to draw your attention to this very simple, very evident statement. But I would like to say you, maybe within the last years, there was the first and the only one statement on behalf of three depository states of NPT. And I would like you to remind my words, and when 2020 will come, I mean NPT review conference, whether we will get anything tangible after this conference. I would like to see success, but today I'm not sure that we can get substantial results during this conference. We consider the NPT to be a fundamental element of global stability and security. It's a reliable barrier against nuclear weapon proliferation. Apart from its non-proliferation dimension, the NPT is a unique tool that promotes nuclear disarmament as well as international cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. And I'm sure that during the NPT review conference, there will be a great struggle between non-aligned movement, non-nuclear weapon states and nuclear weapon states regarding the peaceful use of nuclear energies, as well as what should we do together to strengthen non-proliferation regime. We stand for the goal of reaching the world free of nuclear threat. However, it's a hard and time-consuming process. We need to consider a number of key factors influencing strategic stability. Aspiration of a number of states to ban nuclear weapons in isolation from the NPT are doomed to failure. I hope that you understand what I'm talking about, what kind of draft document I'm trying not to undercut, but at least to express my concern regarding the implementation of that document. The 2020 NPT review conference is at hand. We will be analyzing the achievements in nuclear disarmament, non-proliferation, and peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Russia is ready for this discussion. Our biggest accomplishment is that in February of 2018, we met all requirements under the New START Treaty. We haven't received any complaints in this regard. It's very interesting. You said that if you look at the documents of State Department, you will find a lot of critics on Russian implementation of various agreements, arrangements, understanding, and so on. But there is no any claim to us regarding this document. However, we have questions to our American colleagues on how they have been implementing the treaty's provisions. There are also questions to other nuclear states on their implementation of the well-known Article 6 of the NPT. We will have to check out their reports during the conference, or just as before, they will mostly confined to criticism from Russia and the United States. Although all the more pressing issue what will happen to nuclear disarmament after 2021, when the New START is set to expire. Due to a deep crisis of the Russian-American relations, it would be naive to assume that our countries are likely to conclude a new treaty on strategic offensive arms by 2021. That is why Russian President Vladimir Putin suggested to thoroughly consider a possibility of extending the New START for another 5 years. The Americans are saddened. We hope that the United States will not delay its response and voice its opinion on the treaty, which was previously regarded by the majority of countries as a golden standard in disarmament. Another document that raises our concerns is the INF Treaty. We are accused of violating the treaty by allegedly possessing a certain 9M729 missile that violates the INF's provisions. However, we do not see any clear facts or arguments which could lead to conclusions of our violations. We have heard such accusations most recently during the October NATO Defense Ministers Summit in Brussels. Let's look at this issue. Neither the United States, nor even more so NATO, which, by the way, is not a party to the treaty, have any tangible data on the missile's performance characteristics. Simple question. When and where was it tested? Who confirmed that the missile traveled over 500 kilometers, surpassing the distance allowed by the INF Treaty? We await clear evidence and continue to deny any groundless accusations. It's noteworthy that in this issue we do not even hear the highly likely phrase, which is clearly loved by certain Western colleagues, but rather direct statements that the Russians violate everything. Our concerns on our part are very specific. Here a list. The United States has deployed Aegis Ashore missile defense systems in the base in Romania and plans to do the same in Poland. Vertical launches, similar to the Mk-41 all-purpose sea launches, are part of these systems. They are intended for offensive purposes, including use of sea-based intermediate-range Tomahawk cruise missiles. Nobody is willing to explain anything to us. Nobody would like to discuss this issue at all. We have received any explanation regarding these missile capabilities deployed very close to the Russian boundary. Moreover, these systems are being deployed in direct proximity to our borders. It's another factor. If we were to deploy such missiles near the United States territory, wouldn't it be taken in America as a direct threat to its national security? Another example. Over 2 decades, the United States has been testing target missiles, which are similar to intermediate and short-range ground-launched ballistic missiles. No explanations have been given to us. How should we respond then? Finally, the United States increases production and use of assault unmanned aerial vehicles. We believe that they fall under the treaty, which covers ground-launched cruise missiles. Our concerns have been once again ignored. What should we do? We consider it inappropriate when only American so-called concerns regarding Russian activities are in the spotlights of the international community, while our complaints seem not to exist at all. The work must be fair, discussions clear and transparent. The goal is not to blame, and the purpose of my presentation is not to blame someone for something and simply draw a line, but rather to find a solution to this problem. All the more so, since recently we hear more and more against statements from the United States military command that the country requires intermediate and short-range missiles to deter China. Could it be that the United States is looking for a pretext to abandon the INF Treaty while obviously blaming Russia for it? I have a lot to say about it, and I hope that if there are any questions in this regard, it's very good that I have a blackboard here. You see that I like it very much, as well as maybe next time you see that Bill, you will prepare also a map of our planet. You see that to show about our missiles, about the missiles of other strategic partners, and so on. A question comes up: what's next? Possibly more extensive reduction of strategic forces are required after the New START expiration. What would happen if the United States suddenly decides to withdraw from the New START treaty? Undoubtedly, reduction of strategic offensive arms isn't the end in itself. Reduction for the sake of reduction. It is quite obvious that Russia's security is currently defined not only by the ratio of strategic nuclear weapons in Russia and the United States. It depends on many other factors. Plans to develop the United States global missile defense system, the situation with the sea-launched long-range cruise missiles and other long-range high-precision systems, nuclear post-shell NATO alliance, potential removal of United States non-strategic nuclear weapons from Europe. By the way, it's a very interesting issue. You see that I am ready to continue a dialogue on this issue with you. And last year I was very much surprised that you decided not to raise this issue at all. So does it mean that it's not so important for United States to discuss this issue?
I have a question for you.
Yeah, excellent. Because I would like to say you that nuclear bombs deployed in Europe, for us, for Russia, we consider them as strategic threat to us. Because a problem for understanding what is different, what kind of differences we see in strategic and tactical nuclear bombs, it means whether our weapon can reach the territory of the United States or not. Our tactical weapons cannot reach United States territory. It's fact. But United States nuclear bombs deployed in European territory can reach the territory of the Russian Federation. That's why we consider this weapon as a strategic by nature for us. At least for us. I'm ready to continue conversation and discussion in this regard. It's very interesting. So, involvement of all nuclear powers, with no exceptions, to the process of reduction and limitation of their nuclear arsenals become all the more relevant. I wonder what the other nuclear weapon states under NPT, because there are some countries who are staying out of NPT, but we also have some questions about their policy in this regard. You see that. So again, what nuclear weapon states under NPT provisions will say on nuclear disarmament during the upcoming NPT review conference? Please remember my question in 2 years. I would like to draw your attention to a serious problem. Currently, we have zero professional dialogue with the United States on any of the strategic stability issues, including missile defense. And I would like to add what is written here. So we have concerns. What is going on? We don't understand what kind of plans the United States has. I just would like to draw your attention. There is a crystal clear nexus between strategic offensive forces and strategic defensive forces a New START treaty. We cannot continue reduction in nuclear arsenal without taking into account a real missile defense potential of the United States. For us, it's a serious concern. So how can we move forward? Why doesn't the United States public worry about it? Please, you see that I can't see any publications in the United States press, or with due respect to your institution and other colleagues, about the development of missile defense in the United States. And there is a simple question: how missile defense of the United States can affect the strategic stability in the world? Whether the United States is a positive step for strategic stability, or it is a negative, how we consider. Maybe we are mistaken, but could you give us any argument to support your thesis? Moreover, till now, as you know, that there is no publication of new concept of this administration regarding missile defense. What will be in the plans of Pentagon? We don't know, we don't understand. But we have to be prepared to find appropriate answer to any development situation in this regard. We, as many other states, are troubled by the situation in nuclear non-proliferation. This will be one of the key issues during the upcoming NPT reform. I doubt that non-nuclear states will be ready to assume additional obligations or commitments in this regard without a clear signal from nuclear states to continue the process of nuclear disarmament. The situation with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action raises a special concern. Should the United States Security Council Resolution 2231 be executed if the United States considers itself not committed to its implementation? There is a very interesting question. By the way, how should other resolutions be treated? Does it mean that today one can adopt a decision within the UN Security Council and bail out the next day? In this regard, we call upon all countries to clearly and explicitly adhere to their obligations within the nuclear deal. I would like to emphasize obligations, because this resolution was adopted by UN Security Council. It's not understanding. It's not just only simple commitments, political commitments. It was confirmed, it was endorsed by the UN Security Council. We think that a unilateral withdrawal from the United States from the agreement poses a threat to the non-proliferation regime. There are a lot of questions on how quickly we can reach denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We support the American efforts in this area. We stand ready to back the United States. However, it is concerning that neither a single warhead nor even a missile has been dismantled to this day. We have noticed that the DPRK has made several direct steps to meet American demands. We think it is high time to think about the whole set of restraints imposed on North Korea. It is important to take steps in accordance with the Russian-Chinese so-called roadmap to mitigate the situation on the Korean Peninsula. Actions from one side mean that the other side should take steps as well. In conclusion, I hope that you are not tired. Just only a few thoughts you said regarding strategic stability. I would like to note a positive momentum for international stability gained during the Russian-American summit in Helsinki. It was a good talk. The intent of both presidents to bolster international security is evident. It is regretful, though, that it has not been put into tangible actions. We are ready for a constructive dialogue. We hope that the United States administration will soon finalize interagency coordination of its approaches that will not leave the international community disappointed. I would like to stress that if we want to strengthen strategic stability, we will require an equal dialogue with mutual consideration of each other's interests. It is necessary to revive the channels of bilateral communication on strategic stability and create conditions that will allow us to advance strengthening non-proliferation of the weapons of mass destruction and means of their delivery, to preserve and adapt where necessary mechanism of arms control. In all, we will have a positive impact on international stability, peace, and security, on the principle of equal and indivisible security for everybody, for everyone. So, thank you very much. I'm ready to be tortured by you.
Me included, I assume.
Why not?
I have some questions.
Let's share responsibility.
Why don't we begin? I'll recognize students and staff and colleagues who may have questions. If for some reason you pause, then I'll step in and ask a question. But I do want to give you an opportunity, it's a very unusual opportunity that you have to engage with Ambassador Antonov. So all I ask is that you identify yourself before you ask the question, and then we'll proceed with the Q&A. Ms. Biggood, please.
Okay, thank you. Ambassador Antonov, it's very nice to see you again. Thank you for coming. My name is Sarah Bidgood. I'm a research associate at the center. I was very interested in your comments about Article 6 of the NPT, because when I was at this year's PrepCom, I also noticed that Russia was raising concerns about US violations of this article. And I assume that they pertain to concerns about NATO nuclear sharing, and I am interested—
It goes without saying.
Okay, and I'm interested to understand why this concern has suddenly arisen, because to my knowledge, this was addressed during the negotiation of the treaty.
Your question is for 1 hour.
Okay.
So if you permit me, I divide this question in two spheres. You said that, as I said to you, that I like very much to use the blackboard. First, you see that I said about our concerns on START treaty. Just only for those who are not involved in negotiations and maybe who are just simple political science and never visited Russian military site or even American nuclear sites. I hope that here it's majority. There is tube where it's possible to launch a missile here, and then missile will fly. There is an agreement between the United States and Russian Federation that we will convert some such tubes. Please say I would like to apologize to those specialists who understand what they are talking about, that I'm using very simple words and abbreviation, you see that. So there is an agreement to convert such tubes and to make them not ready and not be possible to use for missiles. But I hope that who is dealing with NPT understands that we should do it in a reversible manner. It means that this tube should never be used in the future for missiles. But for example, what did we do in Kazakhstan? And on the site, a nuclear site where we made nuclear sites. You see that there were some tube here, launches, silos, and missiles were going from this like this, yes? And we put here cement. Cement, so it's impossible to remove cement, you see it from this tube. What Americans are doing with such tube? They are ready to put here just only simple cover from metal. It's very easy to fix this cover here, and of course for a moment it will not be possible to use this tube for missile launches. But in 5 minutes, it's possible to take out this cover, and again this tube could be used to launch missiles. So what we want? We would like to see disarmament process irreversible. Irreversible. It's a demand of all non-nuclear weapon states, and everybody understands that how it is important. So regarding nuclear sharing and deployment of American nuclear bombs on the territory of European countries. First of all, I hope that the majority who is here knows that nuclear sharing is a possibility for non-nuclear weapon states to acquire how to handle, how to run with the nuclear weapons. We are talking about the possibility for German, Belgians, for other Polish fighters or pilots, to run planes that can carry nuclear bombs during peaceful time. So during this time where there is no war, non-nuclear weapon states personnel is taught by the United States how to run with nuclear weapons. We consider it as a violation Article 2 and Article 1. Article 1 from the United States side and Article 2 from non-nuclear weapon states. Full stop. And I just would like to say you that we raised these concerns many times. And I remember when there was an excellent time when I was a head of Russian delegation to NPT. In all my statements, you could find reference to this issue. The problem is what kind of answers we got from the United States and from other NATO countries. That there was an agreement, oral agreement between founders of NPT, and when we try to give this document now, answer is oral understanding. You said it. Of course, I respect oral understanding and agreements, but what's about the expansion of NATO to the eastern part of NATO? Why you say that oral agreements between senior officials, between leaders of all countries are not considered now as valid? And why we consider any oral agreements agreed in the end of 50th are valid still now? Whether it is a double standard, or it's just only Russia does not understand the substance of current political situation. That's all.
We'll follow up here. If I can come in on this point, or on a related point. As we kind of alluded to, Ambassador Antonov was the head of the Russian delegation at the 2010 NPT Review Conference deliberations. As many of you know, that negotiation produced an unusual action plan.
Why unusual? Excellent.
No,
You said,
well, it didn't
you
happen
said
previously.
as far as I decided to leave this mafia and non-proliferation mafia process, you said that you decided to violate it. You said that what's excellent?
Okay. I'm getting there. So 64 action items were agreed to, of which 22 dealt with disarmament. This was not a legally binding document, but was politically agreed upon without any dissent. Something that doesn't happen all the time in the NPT review process. So my question...
Previously it was 1995.
Almost every... 95...
Indefinite extension.
That's right, but there was not actually a consensus document with respect to the review process. Well, we can talk about that. 3 decisions, 1 resolution adopted without a vote. But that's another story. But that's 95. Let's go back to 2010, where you were a major player. So
you're making some preparation to blame.
No. Well, I want to congratulate you and the negotiators in 2010 for producing, I think, a very important document. What I worry about, and my question to you really is, how does Russia regard those 64 action items today? Are they still relevant? Can we walk away from them? There are some countries today which are speaking as if they no longer are relevant. The political circumstances have changed. We are no longer obliged, for example, to address the recommendations dealing with the Middle East. But if you say that with respect to the recommendations of the Middle East, what about the other items that were agreed to? And so I'm curious whether you think, as a negotiator involved in the production of that important document, whether today those action items remain relevant and should be respected.
Bill, you said that I'm not scared to answer to any question, but I would like to understand me that now I'm presenting my personal perception, my personal understanding of the situation. First, I consider that all decisions of NPT are valid. The second is that everybody has to fulfill decisions made previously. Because if we undercut any of these decisions, it means that you said that the whole review process will be undercut. It would not be possible to agree for anything new. So you said that we can, having said that, I would like to say, of course, political situation has changed. It's a lot of concerns appeared. Of course, it goes without saying. We have to look at them. We have to tackle real problems as well, taking into account current changes in the situation. You see that during the forthcoming NPT review conference, but it does not mean that we have to undercut what was achieved by our predecessors as well as some old guys.
He looks at me. Okay, thanks.
Bill was a member of Kyrgyz delegation. You said that during NPT. It seems maybe even you were deputy chief or
I was one of the only two members.
Great cardinal. You said that who was staying behind the curtain of the policy of Kyrgyz delegation. You said that at that time. And sometimes we fought against each other. You said that, but I like it. It was a friendly fight.
That's right. That's right. William, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm William here. I'm a current student here. Currently, I'm undertaking an independent research project looking at the place of nuclear weapons in Russia's military doctrine. And one of the central parts of that debate I've been finding so far is the relevance of and how to define the so-called escalate to de-escalate doctrine. I was wondering, it'd be immensely helpful for my research if, you could define what that actually means, and as well, is it actually relevant?
I would like to be candid with you.
It's for record.
The following questions, next phrase will be off record.
Okay.
I don't understand. What does it mean, escalation for de-escalation? You see that what I'm concerned that the United States has decided to elaborate, small warheads, small nuclear warheads that could be used if and when situation is serious for United States security. For me, how I understand it, you said that it's unofficial by answer, especially for Russian journalists. You said that. For me, how I understand it, that this weapon could be used by United States to stop maybe escalation of tensions, and it's very dangerous. It's impossible to stay that you said that it's possible to use just only little nuclear bomb and nothing happens. You said. As to us, I think so. For us, it will be a nuclear attack. So it's impossible, you said that just only to exchange one missile with a small quantity of nuclear fissile material inside.
So it just sticks to
So I consider that what the United States is doing is decided to reduce a threshold to use nuclear weapons. It means a possibility for nuclear conflict is becoming more evident. I consider that it's a very dangerous step towards escalation. First of all, between the United States and the Russian Federation. Having said this to you, I would like to confirm it again that we need practical, official, professional dialogue between our military officers to understand to each other. It's a disaster for the Russian Federation as well as for the United States that till now there is no any dialogue, there is no any place where we can meet, where we can close doors to ask our journalists to stay out of this door and to openly exchange our understandings, maybe making some mistakes during explanation for better understanding. I remember START treaty negotiations, how it was important to provide an opportunity for our military guys to sit together and to explain each other concerns. And sometimes we left, you said, a room of negotiations being furious, but next morning, you said, when we returned back, we were happy because after night we understood position of our opponent. It was very interesting and it's very important for us. So that's why we are insisting, we consider that it's very important to restart such non-political but professional dialogue between our military officers responsible for these issues.
That's really important. Okay, I'm going to call on a few more. I want to particularly give an opportunity to some of our Russian students who are here to engage with you. Jimmy, if you have a quick question, I'll call upon you. You don't qualify as a Russian student, but
oh, darn,
you
I
had your
don't.
hand up earlier. So
you can call on me whenever you deem appropriate. My question's going to be probably a normal length question. So, you want me to answer it now?
why do you, let's wait just a moment. I do want to make sure that some of our Russian students have an opportunity to engage. Natalia, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Natalia Artemenkova. I'm a student of a dual degree program between MGIMO and Middlebury Institute of International Studies. I also want to seize this opportunity, and I'm happy to see you here, and I would like to seize this opportunity to ask you a question according to my research. It's my master's thesis on US-Russian dialogue on weapons of mass destruction free zone in the Middle East. What do you think? Will their states parties to the NPT be able to break the stalemate on WMD free zone in their 2020 review conference? And particularly, I'm interested. Would you evaluate the current state of dialogue, Russia and the US on this?
Do you want official position, or you would like to get my personal understanding?
Need some researching.
Another off the record.
I remember how this idea was created. It was a beautiful French town, Annecy. There was a beautiful conversation between P5 and Egyptian delegation regarding the situation on Middle East. Egyptian delegation was very much furious regarding the lack of progress on this issue. And today I will not name you names who initiated this idea, but I can say you privately. I remember you said we decided to look, at the time there was a research work made by Mr. Ikeos. Yes, right. It seems so, and other prominent leaders of Western countries, as I remember. And you say that some guys have found an idea to convene a conference without specificity. So we decided to elaborate this issue. I remember that at the time I called to Mr. Vershinin. At that time he was the director of department responsible for Middle East. Probably now he's the deputy minister, and just only raised an issue: could we support such idea to convene such conference? So at that time there was a breakthrough. There was a consensus. It seems to me that Western countries, such as UK and France at that time, it seems to me, maybe I'm mistaken, they didn't understand in which direction we are going with the United States.
but they decided to support the United States position, not Russia. So we have created an idea of this conference. Our understanding was that this conference should not be a one-day event or just only 1 week event. It should be a starting process that could lead us for a real negotiations in the end. The problem was, and is still alive to my regret, readiness of Israel to participate in such discussions. Moreover, you see that Israel is not bound by the decision of NPT, because there was a decision to convene a zone free of nuclear weapons and missile and delivery means of delivery. Don't forget about means of delivery, because it was important for countries who are living in that region. But at the time, there was no support from Israel. Israel from the beginning said, we don't recognize NPT review conference's decision. It's clear because they are not member. As India, for example, neither India nor Pakistan. You see that. But we relied on United States. We hoped at the time that United States would persuade Israel to sit at the table of discussions, not negotiations, discussions. Because for us it was very important to organize maybe round table, you see that, to start a process where everybody can put on the table their own concerns. And as I like to repeat, to make a paper with at least concerns from one side to another one, then to try to emerge them. So you see that we devoted a lot of efforts, energy to implement the decision adopted in 2010 review conference. But we failed at this stage. You see that if you ask me whether this decision is relevant, yes. Whether you are in favor to implement such decision, yes, as to Russian side. But you see that we know the reluctance of the United States to make specific steps to implement that resolution. And taking into account current situation, current relations between Israel and Arab countries, and some steps made by these administrations, I have more questions regarding a possibility for us, I mean for international community, to implement this resolution. It seems to me that it's not high time to convene such conference now, because again, we no need conference just only for conference. As to me, you said I would like to see preparatory process. I would like to understand what will be on the focus of this conference. So, and moreover, you said, what kind of follow-up should we wait? And for what follow-up should we fight together? And whether, who will fight together? Who will be with us? Whether at least 3 depository states, 2 other depository states will join us, there is a question mark. And at this stage, there is no any consultations between the United States and Russia on this issue, as well as on other issues of strategic stability. And I consider that this issue is a part of agenda for our strategic dialogue between the United States and Russia. At this stage, as you know, we have just only one channel of communication at the level of Mr. Bolton and Mr. Patrushev. And I hope that forthcoming meeting between Mr. Bolton and Mr. Patrushev will be successful. It will be in the end of October in Moscow.
Thank you, Ambassador Antonov. I should just mention that we have our dates for the next Honesty meeting. I think it's March 15th and 16th. So if you want to escape, you're welcome. Natalia will extend an invitation to you too if you want to continue the discussion.
Bill, with pleasure, you see that. I love this town, but please, you see that I'm under the European Union sanctions. I'm talking too much. That's why you see that I'm not welcomed in some Western European capitals. especially in Brussels.
So we'll have to solve that first. Okay. Let me see here. Jimmy, I'll give you a chance, and then we have another one of our maybe most students. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming and talk to us. It's actually a pleasure to get to hear other sides and other states being able to address this. So my question is, what are some ways you think that the Russian Federation and the United States could work together on addressing some of these really pertinent, important international issues? Natasha brought up the WMD free zone in the Middle East as one good example. There's obviously North Korea and the events surrounding that. That's another example. There's many, many examples that we can point to. But what are some things that you believe that Russia and the US could cooperate together on, or ways that the Russian Federation can help the US in its efforts, the US can help the Russian Federation in its efforts to help progress some of these situations toward a satisfactory resolution?
It seems to me that Mr. Putin has introduced a positive program of actions in this regard. And if you look at the press conference of Mr. Putin, you will find answers to all your questions. You will see at least a list of proposals how we can see a process of a restoration, a dialogue between the United States and Russia. You see that we have invited United States for a dialogue. There are some burning issues. Today I have mentioned one of them. What should we do with the START treaty? Should we start negotiations to create a new one? Should we just only extend this treaty? Or should we forget about this treaty as it is? And should we think about, again, arrangement, understanding in nuclear sphere? I don't know, you said, because I don't know position of United States in this regard. You see that we have offered United States a lot of channels of communication. For me, it's a pity that there was no possibility for our ministers of foreign affairs to meet each other during the high-level weekend UN General Assembly. You said that as to me, you said, I have offered United States to organize such meeting. You said it on the margins of UN General Assembly. But to my regret, I don't want to blame anybody, but there was no any conversation between our ministers. And it's necessary to start from the dialogue at such level. Then it's necessary to defreeze dialogue at the level of deputy ministers on various issues. For example, sir, you said that there is you have heard about it, there is a lot of concerns from the United States regarding so-called Russian meddling into United States election. For example, you said that again as to INF treaty, you said that I visited State Department, I visited White House, I offered a dialogue. I said, let's organize a meeting, maybe in third country, maybe in Washington or in Moscow. We will sit together and we will listen to what kind of concerns you have. You don't want us diplomats to be involved. Maybe it's high time for our special services. It's a very senior level to sit together and maybe they will discuss. I know that we have very good contact at the level of Chief of Staff of Russian Army and United States Armed Forces, Mr. General Danforth and General Gerasimov. But also I have to repeat again that I'm to my regret that there is no enough personal meetings, discussions between these generals. And I'm dreaming to see maybe once Mr. Shoigu sitting with General Mattis at the same table together dealing with this very sensitive issue. It's very important. As I understand it, now I don't want to interfere in your relations. I don't want to say that Ambassador Antonov decided to come to Monterey to interfere from that angle, from that corner of the United States and your relations. As I understand that, administration is waiting the results of mid-term election, November. And you said that when I have a conversation with my American colleagues, and they said that, oh, we know that you interfere in our relations. I said that, come on, you said that. If Democrats come into power, you said that our relations will be bad.
If Republicans are still in power, relations with the Russian Federation will be bad. Why should we help anybody? I can't see any logic, you see that, in our potential action. And it's very easy to say, come on, you see that I know that you are a thief. You say, come on, how could you blame me? Highly likely. I got some, you see that conversation outside of this door, that there will be a guy who is sitting very close to this corner and he is a thief. And I don't want to discuss with you this issue, but I know what I'm talking about. Then I will smile you, I'll turn my head back. So, sum up. We need a professional dialogue at the various levels. We need to restore channels of communications between administration of the United States and the Russian Federation. As to us, we are ready to do it.
It's interesting, if I could just add to this, I just gave you a copy of the book that Sarah and I just produced, but in the concluding chapter, there are lessons that are drawn and recommendations, and what you pointed out is also front and center in our book as well. So on this point, I think we clearly agree. We'll have time for maybe one more question. We have to break for lunch, and then we will, some of us, particularly our students, will continue the conversation. Please.
Thank you very much for coming, Ambassador. 2 years ago...
You want to identify yourself?
Yeah, my name is Rory Rossio. I'm also a student here at Middlebury Institute. 2 years ago, Ambassador Kislyak was here, and we also had a very productive discussion with him. And I was, at that time, very concerned about the visa regime. He informed us, the visa regime, the process of acquiring visas between Russia and the United States. He informed us that in 2012, Russia was interested in introducing a visa-free regime, so visa-free travel. Of course, that didn't happen, but I'm wondering now, I think one of the biggest tragedies of the escalation of tensions is the cutting of diplomatic staff, both in Russia and in the United States, the closing of the consulates. And so I'm curious if it's a priority for the Russian government to restore the levels of diplomatic staff, because I think it's, like you said, it's important to introduce professional dialogue amongst military leaders, but I think it's also important to reestablish those bridges between regular people.
I would like to say that Mr. Ambassador Kislyak was a lucky guy. Because at that time, our relations were not in so bad shape as I see today. You said that you mentioned just only visa problem, but I also would like to raise a problem of our property. The United States has decided to seize our property, not far from, for example, Washington, where our children had an opportunity to have a rest. You are right that our consulate general were closed, but not only closed. Buildings were seized. A building of trade office in Washington was seized as well. And you see that I tried to have access to those buildings. Access just only to see, I'm kidding now, whether our chairs, our tables, our lamps are still there. What's about my carpets, you see that? Because everything was seized. And of course, there is no possibility for me even to enter to this building. And every 2 weeks, we send a note to the United States with a request for a permission to Russian ambassador and other diplomats to enter to the Russian property. And answer is no, without any explanation. So till now, you see that we have, to my regret, we have a visa war between the United States and the Russian Federation. There is, you see that oral understanding or mental understanding, you see that between the State Department and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that we will issue for one person, provided the United States will issue for another one. So it's impossible to say that we are ready to issue so many visas as you want. The same with ours. You said that, moreover, you said that the United States have introduced additional restrictions to issue to some persons, for example, who worked in European countries in our embassies, with the explanation that they will never issue visa to those who were expelled from those countries to Russia. So we have so many problems, but again I would like to say, and I have confirmed it many times in State Department and White House, that we are ready to stop this war, with the war. You see that we are in a situation that we have to retaliate on such actions. We consider that they are very unproductive, unconstructive. We no need such policy. We are in favor to restore all channels of communications and relations, as you mentioned. That's all what I can say. So I hope that everything will be fine during midterm election, and maybe you said that there will be other channels of communication between the United States and Russian Federation.
What we are not able to do is, what I'm not able to do at least, is to speak on behalf of the United States. It's hard even for me to speak on behalf of the state of California, although I feel more comfortable doing that. But what I can do, I hope, Jeff, is to speak on behalf of the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, and to promise you that there is a venue in California that is always available for the purposes of promoting a dialogue. We may not agree, but we're pleased to meet. We're pleased to interact and to discuss issues of critical importance, I think, to both countries, and nuclear non-proliferation is one of them. And so we hope to continue this dialogue in the not too distant future, not only in Monterey, but also in Washington and elsewhere. So Moscow, of course. So please join me in thanking Ambassador Antonov so much for his very candid and interesting remarks, and we will do it again soon, I hope. Thank you so much.